Hey everybody, Steve Burns here. We're going to address how to set up the preferences in Blender so that you can improve upon your productivity. Let's go ahead and get started. Let's start on your edit menu and let's go down to preferences at the very bottom. This is where we're going to learn to customize Blender. The first thing you're going to notice is the first button is interface. And pretty much the section here, I want you to keep everything to default with the exception of the very top one, which is called resolution scale. And you can set that up however is best for you. Let me show you how it works. Right up here is your resolution scale. If you click and hold and drag to the right, it increases the resolution of your interface to great resolution, an extreme resolution, or to zoom in a lot closer so things are much larger. I personally like going to 1.20. I'm going to go there. It makes it just a little bit larger. It works great for in my teaching for students so they can see things a little bit easier, and it's easier on my eyes to be able to track these small buttons and this text. Okay, once that's done, we're going to leave it alone. Go to your viewport, the next one down, and what I want you to do is just to keep everything here default. Let's touch nothing. Go to your lights, we'll touch nothing. Everything is default here as well. The same for editing and the same for animation. We are going to skip over extensions and add-ons until the end. Let's go to your themes. All right. I'm going to address, before we talk about the things, I'm going to do one last thing. Go to your input, go past your themes, and go to your input. And what I want you to do is select your emulate 3-button mouse. What that does is it allows you to use Alt, I'm going to bring my cube over to the right, Alt and left click to drag. It will allow you to rotate around your 3D scene. Okay, I'll push this one over to the side temporarily. It allows you to use Control and Alt option and move your mouse up and down with a left click, and that will zoom in and out. It also allows you to use Shift Alt option to pan right to left and up and down. Okay. Now, you probably noticed that I'm navigating around the selected object. That is because when you go down to the next button for navigation, make sure you have orbit around selection selected, checked. It's unchecked by default. And also have depth checked by default. That allows you to give you some smooth zooms going in close to your object. All right, now Keymap. I want you to have selected here tab for pie menu. What does that do? All right, so once checked, you're going to hit the tab key on the keyboard. By default, tab key goes in and out of edit mode and object mode. Here, it gives you a whole bunch of other modes. In addition to edit and object, you have the scoped mode, weight painting mode, your vertex paint mode, your texture paint mode. So you have, because I work on a regular basis navigating around object to weight painting to sculpting, I like to have those controls in front of me. I think this is going to be a nice little workflow for you to use. All right, let's bring back our preferences panel. And if you go to system, you're going to see something kind of important up here. If you have an NVIDIA card on your PC, which is more than likely for most PCs, make sure you check CUDA. Make sure that you tell Blender to utilize both your GeForce, your graphics card. Mine is GeForce RTX 3080 Ti, and or your AMD Ryzen 9, which is what's on my system. If you don't have a CUDA card, leave everything default here. You're good to go. Important also is under your network, because of the new way that Blender is allowing you to work with downloading plugins. Plugins used to be installed automatically with Blender. They're no longer installed. It's no longer part of your install in Blender. Now you have to go to their online site and install the plugins that you want your particular Blender to have. Make sure you have check the online access. That's going to allow you the capabilities to go online and access those plugins. In addition, undo steps. Do as many as you like. I'm going to bring it all the way up to 256. I believe that's the max you can go, and you have your global undo check. I believe it's checked by default. Okay, so your save and load, we will leave that on by default. Leave everything on the way they are, and the same for file paths. Okay, now we're going to go and play around with what add-ons to add on to include into Blender. All right, so let's address the shortcuts. You're going to find them, shortcuts as well as your add-ons, right over here in the add-ons menu or the themes menu. So if you don't find one add-on in one, try the others. Now Blender has two of these here, and this is new to Blender, but in my opinion they work kind of the same, but from time to time I'll find that where I don't find the plugin in one, I might find it in the other. So just keep that in your mind. Okay, one tool you're going to want in Blender on a regular basis is called the Bool tool. That's for your booleans. Now, if you come right up here to the magnifying glass, right at the top, type in BOO for Bool tool. There it is. Mine is checked already. Make sure yours is checked. The next one is going to be extra objects. All right, I'm going to put in EXTR, extra curves, and extra mesh. Make sure both of those are selected. Now, mine are already installed. So if yours is not installed, that means you probably are seeing an install button on the right hand side of the screen or the right hand side of your plugin. Just click it to install it, then it will show up as you're seeing it on mine. Okay, so the next one is called Loop Tools, and that's a nice little modeling tool, LOO for Loop Tools. Mine is already checked. Install yours and make sure it is also in checked. Magic UVs is very helpful. All right, MAG. And now this one's Lattice Magic, so I want Magic UV. So I'm not seeing it under add-ons, but if I go to extensions, let's go over here and Magic, and we have it right there. There it is. Now, you will notice on mine it's not installed. So I will click install now. Just give it a few seconds and it will install. So it's basically installing in the background. There it is. It's now installed. Okay. We drop it down. There it is. Okay. All right, now we're going to go back to add-ons, and you'll see under the add-ons, under Magic UVs, it's checked. So get the extension to install it. Once it's installed, go to your add-ons and make sure that it is checked. Okay, all right. So another one is called Bolt Factory. That's a cool one. Let's put that in here. Bolt, B-O-L-T. Is not there. Let me go to my extensions. And let's see if I can find it here. And there it is. It's not installed yet. So I'm going to click install. It's done. Come back to add-ons. There it is. Okay, it's checked. All right. Okay, so just keep in mind that get extensions, it simply means this is your install device. Your add-ons is allowing you to activate it or deactivate it with a check mark. Okay. All right, next thing, Node Wrangler. That's going to be an important one. NOD. Let me spell it correctly. And mine is already checked. It's already installed and already checked. Make sure yours is installed and checked. And then another one that I often like is modifier tools. So MOD, there it is, modifier tools. Make sure if yours is not there, go to your extensions and make sure you install it, then come back and make sure it's checked. Okay. All right. So that is there are others that you're going to learn as you work with Blender as to which add-ons you might like to use on a regular basis. But these are the basics. I think it's going to get you started, and you can do most of what you need to do in Blender with these extensions and or add-ons. Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit more next about the interface. So on the right-hand side, you're going to see your navigational planes. It's basically going to be a list of all your 3D objects that are going to be listed in Blender. I like to call these 3D layers, right? So currently we see a cube. This is default in Blender. Now, if for some reason you don't want the cube there when you open up Blender, what we're going to do is we're going to delete it. Hit delete key on your keyboard. That gets rid of it. Now, if we do not want the cube in Blender, what you're going to want to do is now you got everything set up the way you like it. Well, almost set up to where we like it. What you're going to do is you go over to your File menu. You're going to go to Defaults, save your startup default file, and then I'm going to click Overwrite. So if I close down Blender and reopen it again, it'll reopen it up back the way that we like it. But there's one other thing that I might like to do before I actually decide that this is the one this is the workflow that I really want to satisfy me here while working in Blender. Shift A is going to give you access to all your 3D options. Mesh is where your primitives live. Go ahead and put in another cube. All right, so we brought back the cube. Notice on the top panel, the cube shows up. We have some visual options that I would like you to have turned on before we decide to save this interface workflow. Right up here, you see a funnel type of a shape. There are some options in here that I want you to have listed to the right-hand side of your cube. Let's click that funnel right about there. At the very top, here are some of your visual options. The white arrow represents locking or unlocking your layer. Select it. The monitor allows you to turn on or off the effects of that layer. Select it. Those are the important ones I think you should have open. And then when you're done, just click off and it all goes away. And what you're going to see are the two additional visuals that we just told Blender to turn on. Now that we have those, what I want you to do is save this. But before we save this, so that we can always open it up to the way we like to see Blender working, we're going to delete that cube because we don't want that cube always in front of our face every single time we turn on Blender. So by default, this is what you get. It's the default cube. All right, hit the delete key on the keyboard. It's gone. Go to my File menu. Go to Defaults. And Save Startup File. Overwrite. Now, we could save this as something else. Right? If you click on the Keymap right over here, go to the very top, you'll see the default Blender interface is selected, in which we just saved the startup file on top of that. If I drop it down, you have other options up here. You can see one that's called Steve Setup. That's my custom one that I save for myself whenever I'm doing teaching. So you can make your own, right? Now, before we make our own, let me do one last thing. We're going to come down here. Let me close this out. We're going to come down to File menu, and I want you to come on down to External Data. Whenever you save out a Blender file, all your images or textures are not saved with it by default. If you check this checkbox here saying automatically pack resources, all your images, all your textures will be saved with your blend file. That means your blend file is going to have a larger size. But the good thing about that larger size is that whatever you see in Blender and you give the file to your client will see exactly the same thing because all of the resources is packed in with Blender. Check that. All right, I'm going to go make sure it's double check it and make sure it's checked. External data, there it is. Now you can save this. So if I go now to my edit menu and go to my preferences and go to Keymap, I can click on the plus button here and type in the name for what I want to call this and then save it. Okay, now I've already done so. And if we come right up here to where this little drop list is, it's called Steve's startup file. Okay, and if you want to work with me on all of my tutorials, I will save this, I will export this file, which I can do right here. I can export it. Matter of fact, we'll do that now. I'll go to load in the Steve startup file. Now I'm working in Steve's startup file. I will export this out. I will go to my desktop. I'll place it here. And I am going to say, let's place it inside the folder called Blender 101. And I'm going to just save it into the root of Blender 101. stevestartup.py, right? I think it's a Python script. And then export. And in fact, there we go. All right, so we exported the file. So now you guys can actually install that file on your system by going to import, and we will go to my desktop. I will go to the Blender 101, and then we'll scroll down out of the way of the folders, and there's your Steve setup file. Double click it to put it in, and now your interface will match my interface. All right, so hopefully that was helpful. And keep in mind that every time you close out Blender now and reopen it again, it's going to open up to you to this default workflow. But as a habit, you only need to do this once. It's go to your file menu, defaults, save startup file, just to be safe. And once you do it, you don't ever have to do it again. It'll always boot up to that default file until you go in and physically change the file. Hope you enjoyed this. Steve Burns, more to come.